Welcome to the first episode of Series 84, everyone. This month, we have previous guest Satah with us to talk about two games kickstarting as one book, Galactic and Going Rogue. This episode covers the basics of the two games, why we are covering them together, and the history of the games. But before we get to that, we do have some calls to action coming up after the show. Here's what to expect. Join us here after the show where we will have information on a couple of Kickstarters that we have our eyes on that are either right in the middle or right at the end, including the Kickstarter for the games covered this series. We'll also have a call to action from our Patreon, including how you can get a custom C3 branded enamel pin, info on how to leave a review for the show, as well as our patron thank yous. With all of that out of the way, enjoy the show, everyone. Welcome to Character Creation Cast, a show where we discuss and create characters, the best part of role-playing games, with guests using their favorite systems. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan, and this episode, my co-host Amelia and I are thrilled to welcome previous guest of the show, Satah, who is here to discuss two games at the same time. Galactic, a Star Wars-inspired GMless game about relationships, rebellion, and war among the stars by Riley Rethal, as well as Going Rogue, a game inspired by Star Wars Rogue One and Andor, utilizing the same system but geared more towards one-shots and shorter campaigns by Jess Levine.
Satah, welcome back to Character Creation Cast. I'm really excited that you are back, that we get to talk about more Star Warsy style.
This
games.
is really cool. I'm excited.
It's been, how long has it been? Like 2 years?
It's been quite a while since I had the high
remember that
ground.
I was having a mental breakdown about 5 minutes before we were supposed to start recording. So it's been a while.
We're in a much better place at this point.
All I know is that I was in a different apartment, and that's like the only sort of time lock that I have. So I know like vaguely the 20 months that it must have been in, but that's all I've got, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited that you're back. Can you remind our audience who you are, along with your pronouns, what sort of things you do, where people can find you online if they want, if you want people to find you, if not.
Yeah, I'm around. I can be witnessed. Yeah, my name's Satah. I use they, them pronouns. You can follow me on Blue Sky at posatachips.gaygothvibes.online. It's very long and it makes me laugh how long it is. I do TTRPG stuff. I'm an editor and an occasional designer, and I also have a multi-guest solo game actual play podcast where I invite multiple people to play the same solo game as me, completely separately, like parallel, totally separate, discrete games, and then I edit them together to show off kind of like multiple experiences of the game. And that's called Folio. And you can find that at foliopod.card.co or check out all of my work at gaygothvibes.online.
Which is still, I said it last time, I'll say it again, such a good website.
Thank you.
You're like, this is one of those things I will take to my grave with me. You can pry it out of my cold dead hands. Yeah.
It's very good.
Sounds thematically appropriate.
Uh-huh. Well, let's go ahead and get into this, and we'll start by discussing what these games are all about.
What's in a game?
Satah, what are the core concepts of Galactic and Going Rogue?
Sure, yeah. Well, Galactic came first, so I suppose I'll address it first. Often stylized as sort of Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off. Galactic is a GMless game that is, I believe Riley has pitched it as what if Star Wars were good? Or what if Star Wars sort of focused a lot on the relationships between characters and that sort of thing. It's very geared towards telling your classic epic space opera type stories, as is often common, or maybe always, but definitely common in Belonging Outside Belonging games. Each playbook is an archetype, and Star Wars and various properties like it often have characters that are so archetypal that is kind of like a perfect way to create characters for it. And Going Rogue was built off of Galactic, but much more inspired specifically by Rogue One. I do have to consciously remind myself to say Rogue One every time I talk about the movie Rogue One, because I do want to say Going Rogue, because I talk about Going Rogue more. But
Going Rogue.
Yeah.
Just added at the end, like you meant it to be there the whole time.
Going Rogue One. It's I'm just being efficient. It is a darker, telling much more specific stories about like sacrifice and Jess, the designer. As she was writing it, she was processing a lot of her own feelings from her time in political activism and just dealing with like some burnout and like what does it mean to the game asks some thematic questions like, you know, how does cynicism serve us as a coping mechanism and that kind of thing when it comes to like working towards political change. And so Going Rogue is kind of using the very space operatic sacrifice as a way to explore those feelings. So it's a lot like grittier in a lot of ways than Galactic and trying to tell like a much more specific general arc of story.
So I want to talk a little bit about the setting because, you know, you mentioned that it is kind of a Star Wars. It is Star Wars, but not. So, you know, can you talk a little bit about like what specific things make a setting for these games? You know, what specific things do you need? You know, because like I think Star Wars, there's so much, and I think when you come into a game that is even loosely based on an IP that exists, and especially one like Star Wars, where it's like there's so much lore. Like what kind of things do you want people to interact with? What kind of things do they need to know, not know? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like I have complex feelings often about games that are relying on genre as a mechanic or like genre settings and that kind of thing, and how well they communicate and don't communicate things to the players. I think personally, and it's hard for me to say because I am so in Star Wars and so in sci-fi that I'm not unbiased. Like it is very difficult for me to look at this and be like, I don't know what people don't know in a lot of ways.
Right.
But I think the thing that is cool for me about Galactic and Going Rogue for the settings that's built into it is that like you build your settings as part of the creation. Belonging Outside Belonging, specifically this type, this fork of that system has what are referred to here at least as pillars. And so you're sort of like, you sit down and you're like, I know that we're going to be telling a story where we are members of a liberation movement. We are fighting an oppressive force. These are things that we know about our story. When you're setting up this game, you have your basic concept, and then it'll say, you know, you're also going to be embodying the liberation. Choose 2 things that the liberation wants. And then there's a little list that are things like retaliatory violence, imagination of a better world, ideological discourse. And so as a group, you create like, you define what the movement is doing, and you do the same thing for other things like the space between, which is like your sci-fi magic, and you do the same thing for the Mandite, which is the oppressive empire that you are fighting against. And so the setting is definitely like relies on genre conventions of space opera and sci-fi, but I think that these games are designed well enough that you don't actually need to know anything about Star Wars to play them happily and successfully.
Yeah, like if you can grasp the concept that it's like it's in space, there's good guys, there's bad guys, they're fighting against each other, and you're like, you got it. You win.
Which is like, you know,
a war amongst the stars, for instance.
Star Wars itself isn't doing anything super revelatory with a story structure.
Right.
So kind of like, as long as you understand how to tell a story, and then you're like, and also what if that story people had energy weapons and a spaceship? I think that you're like good to go, you know? And it can be as in depth or not as works for your table, I think.
I think that's awesome.
So what sort of tools do we need to play these games?
Ooh, I guess the games themselves, the books. There are no dice. There are
no dice, no masters.
It's no dice, no masters. It's a token-based system, so sort of just a way to track tokens, whether that's like physical tokens or writing it down and that kind of thing. I often play online, so I have used like digital character keepers and that kind of thing, but any way to sort of keep notes and circle things on papers and track your tokens and that kind of thing. I think that's about it.
Yeah. I think I saw some basic random tables in some of the materials.
Oh, yes.
That just need a D6, I think.
That's true. In Galactic and also in Going Rogue post crowdfunder. Ooh, no, Going Rogue has traits as well. Yes. In Galactic and Going Rogue, you can assign traits to help you make NPCs. And in Galactic, there's also a way to generate places. There's a stretch goal for the Kickstarter where Going Rogue will also get places that I will be writing for. Hooray! So, yeah, if you have exactly one D6, you're probably covered for. Yeah. They're also completely optional mechanics, but if you end up needing them, that's really all you need.
Yeah. It is also, you could just pick between the categories and then the actual result for what you care about, which is cool. So yeah, no, that's awesome. I love the token system. So I'm curious how that's going to be playing out in these games.
We talked a little bit about it, but want to dig a little bit deeper on like what kind of stories and themes these games are meant to explore. And I know we mentioned that is part of the difference between them is that like they're telling different kinds of stories. So can you talk a little bit more about that for people?
Yeah, the definitely uniting theme of both of them is that you are playing as a member of the Liberation fighting against the oppressive forces of the Mandate. That is your general arc. In Galactic, you're doing that in a way that is very much heroic and a little bit more like it feels like these characters could really succeed and really get to where they're going. Going Rogue specifically, a thing that the characters do is die at the end, very specifically. Going Rogue is about telling a story of characters who sacrifice themselves to achieve their goals. There is an option to essentially when you sort of progress along, getting near the end of the game, things will start happening. The game will start telling you, set up a threat, set up an obstacle, and then you have the option of either you can leave the mission right now and your duty becomes to tell the galaxy what happened. And if you don't leave the mission, then you are going to sacrifice yourself to achieve your goals. And the thing about Going Rogue is that it is obviously because of that darker than Galactic, but the thing about it for me is that baked into Going Rogue is the success of the mission. It's never like you throw a bunch of characters at something and they all die and nothing happens. they succeed. They do something really big and really tragic that accomplishes some of their goals and moves the galaxy closer to freedom and equality. And so
yeah,
it
so
is
you're not
sad,
just getting
and
like
also,
character
like,
death with no ending, like with
Yeah.
no like satisfaction to it.
Yeah. So it's characters in both games are doing the same thing, but in Going Rogue, they're following a much more specific, determined way of doing it. And their ending is predicted ahead of time. Whereas in Galactic, you can have everybody win and do a fun little medal ceremony at the end and that kind of thing. You know, it's a lot more up to you and open ended.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm really intrigued by that, and like the connection between that and like that feeling of like political burnout and putting everything into things, and you know, like where do you like I feel like I'd be really interested in exploring that, like where do you draw the line between like, okay, I like, is this the thing I want to sacrifice everything for, or you know, what
I
point do
really
say
recommend Aaron
self-care?
Voigt did a video essay on Going Rogue a month or two ago called Going Rogue and Star Wars Cynical Rebels, TTRPG video essay. The channel name is AA Voigt. I really recommend that. I know that Aaron has also done a essay on Galactic that is a little bit shorter that I haven't seen yet, but the specifically the video on Going Rogue dives really deeply into the narrative utility of sacrifice and what a like it's so nice to, in a lot of ways, imagine a world where you are going to know the moment to do the most effective thing, even if it means giving everything. And like that in a lot of ways, the fantasy of sacrifice is a fantasy of certainty. And it is a beautiful essay that really goes into the game and discusses those topics really deeply in a way that I'm not doing total service to. But I really recommend giving that a listen to get a great perspective, I think, on like why
look
this
that up,
is
and we can
a
put that
story.
in our show notes too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is, I think that's a really interesting question, an interesting thing to explore, because I think politically, obviously right now, so many of us are trying to grapple with some of those decisions. And for some of us, those are like big, potentially life or death kind of questions. And, you know, the idea of like feeling like you're sacrificing it all, but the knowing that it will do something. Because I think that's where so many of us are stuck right now, is like, I feel like I'm giving everything, but like, am I even making a dent? And like,
absolutely.
The fact that, you know, because I think there's a question of when you're like, okay, I'm going to play a character that I'm going to die. Like, am I really like, that's doesn't feel like a power fantasy, but in this case, the power fantasy there is that I know it's going to mean something.
Yeah.
And it's a very different kind of power fantasy, but something that's still really impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I think the other thing that I want to mention that ties into sort of this, the how the system itself works in belonging outside belonging, the token economy, characters have to do something that gets them in trouble to get a token, or that is sort of a loose, like there are weak moves and they generally like cause a problem. And then there are strong moves that solve things. And so characters are also very much forced to go through like a really classic narrative arc of like losing so that they can win later. And I think that because these are telling such like cool archetypal stories, just like works really, really solidly to like push the characters to have a satisfying narrative, because we're going to see them lose before we see them win. Just that's how the system works. And it plays out slightly different emotional stakes for Going Rogue for sure, but I think it still feels really satisfying in Galactic when you know, you have your diplomat get captured, which is a weak move, get captured and gain a token. And then
classic
you have
Star Wars
them
move.
like, exactly, get captured on purpose. And then you use the token that you gained from that to reveal a contingency plan at a critical moment. And so you get captured, and then that gives you the narrative power to be like, haha, I was captured on purpose because I have the keys to this prison cell. Actually, don't even worry about it. Like,
I meant for this to happen the whole time.
yeah, I think that it means that every character on an individual basis goes through really satisfying arcs if you interact with the mechanics in that way. And that makes it really cool and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So as characters, what do we do in this game? Like, what does the core loop of play kind of look like?
Ooh, the core loop is, I guess I sort of went over that a little bit there, where it's you do your setup, you figure out what your universe looks like, you figure out your relationships to each other, you figure out your relationships to some NPCs, and then the game really is a just churn of get your characters in trouble so that they get a token, and then they can use that token to get out of trouble later, either immediately or later. And there's also, you can pass tokens to other players through lateral moves, which encourages like interaction and that kind of thing. But as a GMless game, there is definitely that element of you have to set yourself up with a lot of things, and you have to really collaborate as a table to like, you don't have one person just being like, here's what happens. Everybody has to contribute to saying, I have this whole thing I've been thinking of that I think GMless games is a really bad term for them. I think they should be called GM full games because everyone is GMing.
Because everybody's a GM. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's I guess sort of the loop. Get yourself in trouble, get out of trouble, tell that story together, try and play into each other's moves and that kind of thing to make sure that everybody gets a satisfying arc. There's definitely a little bit of juggling I find with these systems, but in a way that can be really satisfying, especially if you're at the right table and everybody's super bought in.
Yeah, it's like collaborative story building, basically,
absolutely.
Right?
Which also, one of the things that the pillars we talked about earlier, the sort of like setting elements, they also have moves and they also play into the token economy. So, for instance, you could say like, we have our mandate, this oppressive political force. They have a move that is to foreshadow a larger threat and gain a token. And so basically, you are invoking these pillars to be like, hey, something scary is a huge shadow is cast over the planet. Sounds like maybe there's a big old ship up there. That's sort of like doing a lot of the stereotypical GM work of like, let's put our characters in a situation and then let them get out of it. The pillars really like play into that a lot.
Yeah.
What do you feel is unique about these games? And especially among sort of like the Star Wars kind of style games, because there are a number of them out there. I mean, including like obviously like the officially licensed Star Wars games. But what do you feel makes these, unique? And I always try and kind of ask this question of like, especially when we have designers in particular, but not the case here, but like, why were these things that needed to be out in the world that like, like what space was this filling that wasn't there, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things. On a very basic level, the GM-less nature of it is very cool. Like if you want a very specific table dynamic, that's what Galactic especially, which I say Galactic especially because Going Rogue is doing something even more specific. But even Galactic, when you're looking at sort of just like general Star Wars games, that's cool if you want that dynamic. I also think that Galactic does a truly incredible job at focusing on the people. In character creation, you are building a lot of relationships. You're building relationships to other members of your party. You're building relationships to NPCs. And a lot of the majority of the moves you have, like, I don't think nobody really has a move that's just like, use your gun.
Right.
They have moves that are about like their personality. They have like, get yourself out of win a fight you didn't start. Or those sort of things that rely much more on like, or are very like interpersonal, and you're always encouraged to interact with other characters in a very specific way. that like relates to your relationships. And I think that that's huge because like in sci-fi generally and in Star Wars specifically, a lot of stuff focuses on your sort of like pew pew,
right,
lightsaber blaster type stuff. And Galactic is not trying to tell that specific story. You can have action in Galactic, but you don't have to. And you can just tell like the melodrama and the character stories. And I think that's fantastic because that's something that I care about very deeply. And obviously Going Rogue is doing something very specific in its sacrifice. And it's telling a sort of like predetermined narrative with like an enormous amount of freedom for how you get there. It tells you how your story ends, but it does not tell you anything about anything that happens along the way. And it isn't the only game that does that, but it does it fantastically. And it really emulates that, I guess, genre space, that experience really well. And the final thing I'll say is that I think I have played quite a few Belonging Outside Belonging games and read even more of them. I think that Galactic and Going Rogue are some of the best written Belonging Outside Belonging games. I think that they show an enormous amount of expertise over that very weird design space. When you're creating a Belonging Outside Belonging game, you are every single element of it, you are having to hit the perfect balance of like broadly applicable and specific enough to be inspirational.
Yeah.
And a lot of Belonging Outside Belonging games, even ones that are successful in a lot of other areas, I don't feel hit that balance that I think Galactic and Going Rogue do. And so it feels a little silly to be like, what's unique? It's good. Because it's not that it's unique, but it is, you know, it's well,
there's something to be said for like finding a way to fit the thing that you want to do into a system. And it's our poor listeners, like, get a bingo card. I'm about to say it. This is why everything isn't 5e. I'm gonna get that tattooed on my arm. I think everything is not 5e. But no, like finding the right mechanics to tell the story that you want to tell, or, you know, if you have mechanics that you like, figuring out a way to make the story that you want like work within that is an art form. And I think one that sometimes we don't in this space like think critically enough about sometimes. And when you hit that sweet spot, that is the difference between like a decent game and like something that is like really, really good. And when you find that way to be like, this is the story I want to tell, and I have married it with like the perfect mechanics to make it do that.
It is like so hilarious and incredible to me. Riley has talked publicly about how she had really barely experienced any Star Wars when she did the bulk of the design work on Galactic. And it is incredible because like, and I think in a lot of ways that was probably a benefit because she wasn't weighed down by a lot of the things that Star Wars has done to itself. And was able to sort of create this pure experience of like, oh, I'm starting to get into Star Wars. I can really see how I would like parts of that. It's presenting some possibilities to me. I'm going to write a game that's playing in that design space. And because it just, for me, hooks into so many of the things that I care about in Star Wars that I know that Star Wars doesn't care about. And so like, it's amazing to me that she just sort of did that without having been like immersed into the whirlpool of the series for that long.
Sometimes that's what you need, though, is somebody who's like come from the outside that like isn't hung up on all of those details that like somebody who's really steeped in it is like, you have to have all these things. And somebody from the outside is like, do we really need them? And like, it turns out you don't, you know? Absolutely.
Having an outside perspective. I mean, that's one of the reasons that Andor was good, right? Is it's bringing people with other perspectives to a long-standing franchise is always going to be a good thing. I guess not always. I shouldn't say 100% of the time. They could do terrible things, but it will generally be a big benefit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the part of the show where I generally look up the Wikipedia article for the game that we're covering, but this game is new and the crowdfunding for it is happening right now. And it looks really interesting that the two games are combined into one book, right?
Yes, yeah, they are. With like some new additions and just general sort of little bit of editing, couple updates.
Mm-hmm. So this is the second edition of the two games, or effectively, right?
Yeah,
That are kind of smushing them together.
I mean, numbers are fuzzy, but Going Rogue, both technically have already had a second edition, and then the neither has had a physical printing.
Oh, okay.
And so this will be the first physical printing for both, and it is, I think, reasonably still both will be called the second edition. It's just that there will be a couple of like Going Rogue is getting a couple of mechanical updates and getting a little bit of content added, and just some general like editing and structural stuff for both of them to really add the polish, but not a huge change from the game that's already been available for a little while for games for both of them.
Yeah. So I'm curious about like the difference between like when did version 1 come out? Do you know?
For Galactic, I have no idea, actually. I know that version 2 was being playtested in January or in early 2021 because it was my Galactic playgroup did a little bit of playtest with Jess, the designer.
Because I feel like I've been hearing about it for a while. So I'm like, it's been around for a few years.
Like how Jess and I met is
cool.
Another friend and I, we were like, we want to play Galactic. Let's both grab a friend, and then the four of us will play Galactic. And that's how I met Jess.
Oh, nice.
And we ended up play testing a little bit of Galactic 2nd Edition before it came out. So that would have been in the first like 6 months of 2021. And then Going Rogue would have been somewhere in there as well.
I'm trying to think like when did like Rogue One and like Andor and all that like
it was pre-Andor, which I know that Jess is correctly quite proud of because she accurately like you can map Andor characters onto the Going Rogue playbooks that were written before Andor came out. It is very impressive.
That's good.
I guess it was 2022 that 2nd edition of Going Rogue came out, and so 1st edition would have been before that at some point.
Right. Yeah. What like prompted the jump to like doing a 2nd edition?
Oh, I actually don't remember at all. So the 1st edition was done for the Galactic Game Jam, I think. So I think that Jess just wanted to like do the thing where like you have a Game Jam game and then you want to like fully realize it into its own thing. And like it started as a little bit of like an expansion or that kind of thing and is now just its own full complete game that is separate from it as classic Jess Levine project stuff. Try and make something small that builds off another system and then build your own complete
Sure.
Yeah, and then it gets out of control and then
system. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what prompted like the decision to do like a full Kickstarter and a physical copy and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I know that Riley had been curious about the idea, but not necessarily interested in doing it as like a solo project, especially because like she's got a bunch of stuff going on.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
What y'all do.
Yeah.
And I think Jess just like wanted to print it and wanted the opportunity to just both wanted Going Rogue in print, and also generally she really prioritizes helping other people get their work out as much as possible. So I think that she was really excited at the idea that she could publish not only her own game, but also Riley's, especially because they're so obviously intertwined.
Yeah.
And I think that it just, with Andor Season 2 coming out, it seemed like a really good time to cross promote.
Yeah.
And then that you know has been complicated by the addition of Disney Plus as a targeted boycott target by BDS, which Jess and Riley are both very open about prioritizing when it comes to their own spending, and like don't get even if you like these games because you like Andor, better if you don't pay for Disney Plus, just because BDS is asking people to not. And they're both really good at, sharing information about that whenever they talk about like the games and talk about why this crowdfunder is happening when it is, which is like complicated, right? Like you spend 3 years or whatever being like, this is going to happen on this date, and then something changes and you go, okay, so how do we do this? How do we do this in a way that aligns with our personal values? And I think that they're doing a great job of that. But I think that is just, they wanted to do it. It seemed like a good time to do it, and they wanted to do it, and so they're doing it, and it's been a lot of work, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's a really awesome collaboration.
Synergy too.
Yeah, that you can take like two games that you're like, okay, these are, kind of based, like one is based off of the other, but like a different, and then you're like, sure, like let's put them together in a book. And, like I think that's really cool that you can have two people that are like, we've both designed games, like but it makes sense for them to go together. Let's put it together. Let's work together.
Yeah. And in this whole process, the two of them have been really trying to champion people who have been involved in the games since their inception. Like there is truly an absurd team of people working on this campaign. And, there are actual plays that Jess was very careful to cast, like who are people who were involved in these games development. Like, let's talk to Austin Walker and Natalie Watson from AMCA because they played Going Rogue on AMCA. Let's bring in me because I've been helping to like design, consult, and edit and playtest the game for years. And Riley reached out to old friends to have contributing writers and that kind of thing. So as much as possible, it feels like they're doing that in like a way that is sort of beautifully celebrating the history of the games as much as possible.
Yeah, that was like exactly the word that I was going to use, is like a celebration of all of the effort and all of the people that it took to make it what it is. And I think that's been really cool to see.
It's really cool. And it's nice to like, it's so easy in TTRPGs to sort of get into the zone of like, everybody just works alone all of the time, right? Like, and and so really sort of openly being like, here are a lot of people who are in part responsible for these games being what they are, I think is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I've been seeing some of that like increasingly in the space, that it's definitely gone from a like, you can only play so many games at a time. So like my game needs to be the game that people are playing. And, like I think I'm seeing more and more of people being like, cross promotion and collaborating and, working together in this sense of like the hobby and industry as a whole needs to, needs
I think
everybody.
That's great. We can always use more of it. Little bit of community building in a creative space goes a long way.
Definitely.
Yeah. And there's also something to be said of games as art too, right?
Yeah.
Like I've got so many games I will never play, but like to have them, to have the art and the like the prose and all of the interesting stuff within a completed game, it's cool to have, and it's cool to peruse through, even if you're not going to be able to play it feasibly anytime soon.
Yeah.
But having that option is really cool.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing about tabletop games too, especially because they involve so much writing. Like I think about video games and stuff, and it's like I wouldn't really like lots of people do. Like I think about like my kids and like Steam sales and like the running joke of like I have so many things in my Steam library that I will never touch. I only just got a Steam Deck, so I have not joined the ranks of people like that yet. I had a PlayStation, so like obviously I only bought discs for games I was going to play. But like with TTRPGs, there's so much about like just reading the writing and like the setting and the world building in them that like even if you don't even get to the rules, that you're like there's so much that you can take in from them. That like it feels like there's so much to interact with, even if you don't actually get to use them for what they're for.
Especially if you're thinking about design.
Yes.
A game book is a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as somebody like who's spent now 4 years just reading hundreds of games, like there's been so much value in that for me. And I've learned so much about like the industry about what I want in games, even, like what I'm looking for, and, what makes something a good game to me, has been fascinating. So I love just like the concept of people making things just because like it is art that I want out in the world, that like even if people pick it up and never like interact with it in the full way that you designed it, that like even just getting to read it or learn about it or something has a lot of value. And I know lots of people who are like, oh, I'm going to take that rule to my table because I've been looking for a way to solve this problem in the game that we're currently playing. And, or, like I'm running this campaign that has this situation and this rule from over here would fit. It's why like everybody's home game is a little bit homebrewed, right? Like anytime you house rule anything, you have done game design.
That's like that's one of the reasons like TTRPGs are such a fascinating thing, in part because the barrier to access is so different from a lot of other creative works, because anybody who plays a game is probably doing a little bit of game design. Right. Whether they're running or just learning how to interpret rules to do something that you want to do, all of that is, in essence, game design. It's very different from listening to a song or watching a movie. You can watch a movie without making a movie. You can listen to a song without making music, though I think that that's a little bit closer. But you can't really play a game without doing some type of thinking about game design. And so...
Right, because there's no game where games. Like... they have put in every possible rule that could come up. Like, I'm looking at you, GURPS. I know you're trying, but like, there's just no way. And so at some table somewhere, no matter what game you're playing, somebody's going to have to say, you know what, there isn't a rule for that. So I will, like I'll use this other rule for something similar in the game, or this rule from a different game. And like the moment that you do that, you have started to engage in game design. Yeah. And I think that's a thing that it took me a long time to really realize, especially as somebody who is primarily a player, who doesn't like run games, and somebody who is like, game design feels so far above what I'm capable of. But like that realization of like, anytime you engage with the rules in any way outside of like doing exactly what that one box says, you have engaged in some level of game design.
Yeah, I think that starting to get into GMless games really unlocked a lot of that stuff even more for me, because like as the barriers between GM and player started to dissolve in my mind, I was like, well, what are any of these barriers real? Like what is the barrier between designer and GM or designer and player? Like I think that everybody is at the table. It's just the designer can't speak for themselves out beyond the text. The designer's collaboration can only be what they give to people. Right. But they are there and they are present. And like starting to think about games text as something that I was collaborating with, much like I would another player or a GM or something, started to really also change how I thought about like, what is design and what are those conversations? And like, I'm, I do editing for TTRPG books. And so I think it's really, I'm obviously fascinated by like, what does it mean to communicate a rule? And what does it mean to, at what point should you give up and say, this actually isn't my responsibility anymore? Like, you can't control everything that happens at a table. You have to, at a certain point, be like, they're going to have the book and they're going to play the game. And I can't control every aspect of that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a game. But just like all of those things, I think, are way closer together than they seem, especially when you first get into the hobby and everything seems so like arcane and intimidating. Yeah. And just like the more experience you get and the more like you read books, even if you're not playing them, the more you play, the more you read, and you realize how many different things games can be. It's just like, oh, I don't have to think about this in one way. I can think about this in the way that makes sense to me. And then like that changes. Ooh, I ran out of words to say out loud because my brain was going too fast.
Yeah. No, I think it makes it
probably ended a thought somewhere in there.
It makes game design like a really interesting form of art too, in that like you are putting it out in the world, not just for people to like take in, but for people to interact with in a way that they don't with something like a movie. Like a movie you watch and then like people can go on YouTube and they can make their video essays about it and talk about it and, you know, like have their discussions on Reddit and things like that, but they never are actively like changing the thing that you put out, right? Like what is on film is on film.
Yeah.
And, you know, with a game, like you have put out a structure for people to make their own art. And that structure itself is art too. But you do like give up a level of control once you put it out in the world to be like, okay, like make what you want with this thing. And it's a really unique situation. And I think, I don't know, once I started to realize that like that interaction with a game was a form of design, I think it started to feel like less of a barrier too. Like it started to feel less like, oh my God, like this is something I could never do. This is something that like, is it like, wow, like game designers, they're just like us, you know? Like, oh, they're real people too. Not that I didn't think that they were, obviously, but like this sense of like, oh, it really can come from anywhere. And there isn't some like magic thing that these people have that I don't.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the barrier, it lowers that barrier to entry. It really is because the art itself is the collaboration, you know? I don't know. It's just been fascinating. It's a thing that like I've really embraced over the years of doing this and like learning more and more about it and like all the ways that we interact with it and like what a unique art form it is.
Yeah.
You know, even when you are doing something like making a game that's like based off of, you know, an IP or something like that you're like, I brought something else that is still totally different and like allows you to interact with this thing that you love in a totally different way too.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Hey, games. You heard about these?
They're pretty good.
They're so cool.
Yeah.
They're
right?
pretty cool.
Like every time we record, I'm like, oh my God, I really love games. And I'm like, yeah, obviously you idiot. Like you've been making this podcast for 7.5 years, obviously. Like you like games. Like, did you know? Fun fact about me.
It is like truly incredible how many like sessions I'll have that just like, you know, we'll play and then we'll like debrief a little bit and just so frequently just have a moment of like, TTRPGs, right?
They're so cool, right?
Did you know? It's like, yeah, we're all here on purpose. We do all know, but still, someone has to say it.
Well, like even a few years ago, though, I was like, game design. Like, I'm a nerd, but I'm not like a nerd. Like, I would never design a game, right? Like, I'm like, that's for the like real freaks, right? And I was like, I still have not fully designed a game. I've like worked on some design stuff here and there. Like Ryan and I have our project that like unfortunately has taken the back burner because of life. You know, like I've helped other friends who are doing like game design stuff, like talk about game design all the time, you know, like that kind of stuff. But I was always like, I'm not like a game designer. And I've come to the realization, I'm like, everybody's a game designer. Yeah. Like, did you decide to not play with that one rule in the book? You're a game designer. Congratulations. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, every time I'm like, wow, they're so good. They're so good. Like people should try out games.
I agree.
I say on my podcast about games. Like I think I was kind of like, I'm like, we're preaching to the choir. Like the people that are listening to the show are already like, yeah, games, right? But have you heard about games?
Yeah, exactly. I'm already wearing a hat that says TTRPG, but I want a shirt that just says, have you heard about games? That sounds great. So this is kickstarting right now as this comes out. I want to add here that it's going through June 30th. I do want to ask a little bit about like some of the stretch goals too. I know this isn't really a question on our sheet, but like it seems like that's part of the excitement of this Kickstarter too, is that there's some other things that you want to add in too. Yeah. Let me see if I can pull those up because I'm involved. I'm very heavily involved in this crowdfunder. Yeah. I'm doing a lot to the extent that I don't like Jess posted something that was like a profile of Satah. Here's a bunch of stuff that they're doing. And I had to ask her, like, what is this one? What is I don't remember I believe that I agreed to it, but I don't know what it is.
That's one of those where you're like, did I already do that or do I still need to? That's really the most important question. Is like, Where am I at with that? Can you tell me?
Yeah, not all of the stretch goals are on here, but the majority are. I know. So the basic thing is the books. You've got your book that is the rule book. It's both games in this beautiful little hardcover. And then there's what they're calling a setting supplement that is a bunch of in-universe fiction. So like we were talking about, you sort of like, you design your pillars, you design your world. Basically, every pillar is being given to a different author, and they're being asked to like write a story about this pillar. Like
cool.
how they would interpret it. So it's a fiction supplement that's very cool. And then there's also a new version of former CC Cast system, I Have the High Ground, that's going in the box set. There's a bunch of like, there's tokens to use. There's other sort of game stuff, like, you know, you design your NPCs using traits. So there's those on the cards. And then the stretch goals, one that I'm very excited about is I love spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets.
God, they're so great, right?
And so one of the stretch goals is that I will be hired to create a fully automated Google Sheet play sheets for the games. Because that is something that I would just do. And so it's really nice to think that I might be hired.
But gosh darn it, pay me for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the Scum and Villains expansion, which was another expansion of Galactic that Jess made, but very specifically like, you know, your seedy underbelly type thing, telling sort of Mandalorian stories or Book of Boba Fett stories and that kind of thing. It's got like playbooks. It's got different pillars that focus on slightly different things to flesh out your criminals and that sort of thing. And then there's also a stretch goal for, as I mentioned earlier, writing some place tables for both Scum and Villains and also Going Rogue. And I think there's almost certainly other ones that I'm forgetting, but it is a very involved crowdfunder. There are like actual plays that are going to be, I believe we'll have already, the first episode of both should be out. I'm not totally sure when the second ones are coming out, but there's a lot in here. There's a lot in here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Like looking through all of this stuff, like, you know, tokens and cards. And, like, oh, so cool. It's so cool. And like the art is gorgeous. I don't know. I'm just a fan of like having books. Like even though like most often I end up using the PDF because I'm like playing online with people and stuff. But I'm like, I'm a dragon hoarding my treasure when it comes to my books. Like my ex-husband was here earlier picking up my kids and he's like, can I just like take a shelf of books? Like you have too many books. And I was like, I'll hiss at you. Don't come near my books. Like
I'm such a latecomer to physical because shipping books to Canada has always been miserably expensive.
Yeah.
And so I've rarely been somebody who has physical copies of things, but I went to Breakout Con in Toronto in March and picked up a couple of books, and just having a couple of books, I'm suddenly like, oh no, I get it. I want books, but the shipping is so bad. So I'm trying to like, I started a spreadsheet about it where every single time I see a book that I desperately want, I write it down in this spreadsheet. And then every time I have the chance to go to a convention, I'm going to bring my little spreadsheet. I'm going to try and find the books. And I'm just trying to exercise patience with it.
No, I think like if it weren't for being an Ennies judge and like having them sent to me, like there's no way I would have the collection that I have. And like right now I'm at a point where like the collection is too big. I can't physically fit any more bookshelves in my living room. And like I have stacks and stacks of books on the floor on this like rolling cart. Like it's like I do have what would medically be called too many books. And so like, congratulations, Germantown Community Library. You will be getting a lot of books. But because I was like, my kid, like I didn't want to part with them, and my kids were like, if you give them to the library, you can still go touch them. And I was like, great idea. Like that's true. I can still go there and like pet my books, you know?
Very smart.
So they will be getting a lot of them. But like,
Yeah.
there's something to be said for like holding in your hands and being like, like, yeah,
It's really good.
I'm like a little troll that way. Like, I'm not ashamed of it. I know who I am and I know what I'm about.
Tucked away in the corner with your books.
Yeah. Well, they make great decorations because like they're so colorful and everything too. And I can be like, welcome to my library of books that I will never play, but I must have. You can pry them from my cold dead hands. I will die and my children will be like so mad because they'll have to clean out my house and be like, Mom, why?
So many books.
I also have to live in this apartment forever because I can't, like, if I had to move, no.
And books
That's so much
are
weight.
hard to move because you think they're small. I should put a lot of them in one box.
Oh, God. Nope. You need small boxes.
Yeah.
Many small boxes.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll probably still back the actual book on the Kickstarter because I want the book.
Yeah. I mean, I've been like, with Going Rogue especially, like, I've been involved in Going Rogue since the very beginning. And so there's something a little surreal about having it. Like, I'm having that weird, like, the aunt being like, I've known you since you were this tall, but I'm looking at Going Rogue being like, I remember when you were a completely unformatted 1,000-word Google Doc.
Yeah.
Now look at
so
you.
Proud they grow up so fast. Then you get the book and you can cradle it and be like, look at this baby I made.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that.
This series was an absolute delight. Satah was fantastic. Really happy that they were able to join us for this series. It was really good to see them again and to cover these really interesting games together. You'll see kind of how the discussion about them evolves throughout the series, and you'll see kind of what we all came up with together going into the discussion series. It's a 5-part series. I'm really happy how this all turned out, so I cannot wait for you to hear the rest of it. The Kickstarter is going on right now, so we'll have a little bit of information coming out shortly. But truly delightful. I'm really glad that Jess reached out to us about these games, and we were able to kind of sneak in and get them covered and have it out in time for the Kickstarter. So stay tuned for some more cool stuff coming up as we get into character creation next week. But before we let you go for the day, we do have a few calls to action. First up, if you are enjoying these games, you can check out the Galactic and Going Rogue Kickstarter that is happening right now and going until the end of June. We've got 5 exciting episodes for you this month to showcase how both of these games can be used, even combining them into a bigger campaign. So definitely check the Kickstarter out if you are able to. They've already fully funded and smashed through some stretch goals. There's quite a few goals left, though, including an expansion for a Scum and Villains supplement that is inspired by shows like The Mandalorian. It all looks fantastic, and there's a lot of great people behind this project, so follow the link in the show notes for more information. Another Kickstarter on our radar that is just about wrapping up is a game that we're going to be covering next month. The creator of Mutants in the Now and Mutants in the Next have a new Kickstarter out there for Mutants from the Archives, Pet Shop Blues. This is an expansion for the previously mentioned Mutants games by Julian Kay that adds a ton more animal options and mechanics to the game. We're going to be interviewing Julian next weekend, but this Kickstarter only goes for a couple more days, so you gotta get on that fast. If you are a fan of Mutants in the Now, or if you've always wanted a physical copy for yourself, you can get a hold of the base game, Mutants in the Next, and this new expansion all together. We're really excited to learn about this game that is said to be a better take on old school mutant animal games like Palladium's TMNT and After the Bomb, and you know how much we loved those. The project is already funded, so you have nothing to worry about with backing it. And I hope you go and check that out. We have a link in the show notes. If you'd like to help us out specifically, there are a few ways that you can do so. We would love it if you checked out the C3 Patreon at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. If you are able to help us out, it would allow us to do more for the community and for the show itself. Amelia and I are so close to having much more free time, which means that we'll be able to devote our energies back into the show and make the Patreon even more worthwhile with new bonus episodes, chit chats, and extra stuff just to bring extra joy to our supporters. But we could definitely use your help. If we get to $160 a month, we're going to hire somebody to help us with our webpage. So that way we can have updates on it at charactercreationcast.com. This would be a quick job every month to add information on the new games we cover, as well as add links to our episodes directly onto our webpage. This will help others find our show through searching for the games that we cover, but also it would be a great resource for fans of the show. If you want a character sheet for a game we've covered, you would be able to go here and find any of the publicly available materials or links to the places that you can find them. If we can get to the $200 level, we'll have them also go back in time and add in pages for all the past series as well. It would go a long way to enhancing the utility of our show for everyone in the community. And if we hit that $160 a month level, I'm going to go ahead and get some enamel pins that will be exclusive to our campaign level backers that helped us get there. And if we have a good enough deal on them and we get enough of them and have extras on hand, future campaign level backers will also get them along with all those stickers until we're all out. So right now we have one more brand new campaign level backer. So if we get only 6 more campaign level patrons, that would get us past that $200 barrier. And that'll be 6 more folks that will get some really great stuff, including new stickers for every month that you're a patron, a set of 3d6 C3 branded dice that are really great quality from ChessX, a personalized thank you card from the both of us, handcrafted by Amelia herself, as well as many other perks. This is all for $10 a month and will go a long way towards helping provide a one-stop shop for any of the games that we cover on the show. Just 2 more campaign level patrons will get us to that $160 goal too, and unlock enamel pins for all of them. We also have tiers at the $5 and $1 levels that get you various perks as well. So head on over to patreon.com/charactercreationcast to get all that info. In addition to all of that, we do like to thank our current patrons every episode. Your support truly helps out a great deal. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Thank you to Lieutenant DJG and Eric Bonds. We couldn't do this without you. Daryl Holiday II, Shadim Cabal, and the Shyest Barbarian, thanks for making this all possible. We're glad to have you here, Benjamin Sweeney, Rob Fletcher, and Kevin Brown. Thanks for supporting. Tentacle Doc, John Adamus, and E3 Sketchpad, we can't thank you enough, but we'll keep trying anyway. Cole McCallum, Carlos Salazar, and Eric S., thanks for helping us make this show. Thanks to Ian Potmeyer, Liam G., and Brian Colm. We are so glad to have you with us. Garden GM, Tanglefoot, and Blue Kryptonite, thanks to all of you. Danny, Nicole Trainer, and Liam Murray, many thanks to you. Many thanks as well to Kenning, Brian Kurtz, and Mark E. Fair. Thank you to Drew Owen, Oz, and James McKinley. Many thanks to Sean Metcalf, Robert, and Kevin Bates. And finally, Deadly Edley, thank you so much for your brand new support. And thank you to all of our future patrons. If you want to join this phenomenal group of individuals, please head on over to patreon.com/charactercreationcast and help us out. The wonderful news is, with our latest patron, thank you, Deadly Edley, we are past the point of covering all of our operating expenses every month by a significant amount, which is fantastic. And with more assistance, we'll be able to make those website upgrades to make exploring your favorite games that much easier. And also, if you want to join in on the discussion with our hosts, some of our guests, and a bunch of fans, head on over to our Discord at discord.charactercreationcast.com. In addition to all of that, if you want to help us out in another way that doesn't require any money, you can leave a rating or review for our show on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. We will read every new 5-star review as we get them and as we both have a chance to record together. So hopefully we can get to our latest, brand new, hot off the presses review next time. I am very excited to share it with Amelia. That's all we have for today's episode. Join us here next week where we do our character creation and world building for Galactic. Until then, take care everyone, stay safe, drink some water, may the space between be with you, and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this character creation series. We'll be back in part 2, picking up right where we left off.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.